And I'm so very happy to be here. As you said, Brother Congressman, the work that I'm doing segues with the day that we're celebrating. And we are celebrating. We are celebrating the blood of our foremothers and fathers, the blood on that floor, that there are those who would deny. Let me say this. There would be no United States of America without the work of enslaved people. Yes, this building would not be here. The Capitol, nothing would be here. The Russell Building, shame on Russell, would not be here. We could go down the list of what would not be here. I call the place that that man lives the house that enslaved people built. That's right. That's what it is. I refuse to call it the other house. It's the house that enslaved people built, and he need not forget it. That's what he has forgotten. There would be no cotton were it not for enslaved people. There would be no tobacco, all y'all smokers, and include some of us who are weed imbibers. That wouldn't even be there were it not for enslaved people. Did I just tell on myself? Well, I do gummies. But I mean, there would be so much that would not be here were it not for us. And we need to celebrate that. Slavery Remembrance Day, because we don't even know their names. We know some of the names. We know the names of those who were excellent. We know about, of course, Frederick Douglass. We know about, those who stood out. But what about the sister who fed their babies? We don't know her name. Fed the devil, the devil's spawn, who went on to enslave her. We don't know her name. We don't know the name of the brothers who plowed that cotton, picked that cotton, took that lash. We don't know their names. So when we got some notables, what we are known for, if you look at enslavement records, you see somebody has a list of what they owned. They will say 37-year-old male, broken leg. They record that because that dealt with his value. But they would not deal with his name. They wouldn't even say who he was born from. They tried to make us invisible. Now we have had a resurgence, which we worked for, a resurgence, which thanks to the blood of Medgar Evers, to the work of Rosa Parks, to so many others, we have had a resurgence. And we even had a president. But now somebody's coming to take it back. And what we have to do then, folks, we have to do our work. We have to do our work. I am sick of passive folk, our allies. We've got allies in the progressive community. We've got white progressive friends, but some of them are silent. They tired. Someone told me, I'm tired of protesting. I said, well, just lay down and go away then. I mean, because if you're tired of protesting, you're really tired of living. I mean, I live on 14th Street, Washington, D.C., 14th and Q. I live in occupied territory where I see these fools with camouflage on, stopping people for nothing, because they can. And the irony of having National Guards from Mississippi, I mean, irony of having the oppressed, the enslavers, the descendant of enslavers come here, where the descendants of slaves built this building we're in right here. That is a horrible irony. It's something that we have to resist. I mean, so we have troops from Mississippi, South Carolina, West Virginia, and Tennessee. Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee has more crime than D.C. But nobody is dealing with that. Tennessee is among the top 5 lynching states. So is Texas, Congressman. And we know that Texas is Texas because they snatched it from Mexico because they wanted to preserve enslavement. Mexico had outlawed enslavement. But Southerners saw Mexico territory as an opportunity for expansion. So they fought to make sure that Texas could be Texas so they could bring their slaves to Texas. Give me a you-know-what break. This is our history. South Carolina, irony in South Carolina is South Carolina, and there's one other state, are the only two states where black people outnumbered white people up until after the Civil War. So what did South Carolina do? See, you have to understand that enslavement was really about predatory capitalism. It's really about money. A lot of people, it was about race, but it was also about money. And so what you see happening, is you created a tapestry of oppression, with weaving law, weaving custom, racial ignorance, weaving them all together to make almost an impermeable fabric that we could not penetrate, which meant that no matter where you ran and turned, that would hit you upside the head. Now, of course, there were exceptions, there always are, but the bottom line is when you look at that tapestry of law. You know, I was president of Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina. The law in North Carolina in 1940 said to teach a slave to read is to excite dissatisfaction to the detriment of the general population. Fast forward, it means don't give a black person a book. So basically, there were 14 states that had these laws against teaching enslaved people to read. David Walker's appeal was outlawed. If they found you with it in the state of Louisiana, you could be executed. David Walker's appeal basically appealed to us to rise up against the shackles of enslavement. David Walker's appeal could get you killed. But guess what? In the early 20th century, so could, I'm laughing because it's not funny, so could owning the Chicago Defender if you were in Mississippi. Because the Chicago Defender encouraged us to leave. The Chicago Defender showed us that we could make it in the North. And so you had the Great Migration. We got the you-know-what up out of there. Because we realized that there would be no freedom. Not only you had laws that prevented us from owning the tools of our trade, laws that prevented us from owning land. These laws didn't start with enslavement, but post-enslavement, they were passed because there were those who wanted to replicate the terms and conditions of enslavement. You could not leave if you owed the sharecropper, you could not leave the land. Now, see, they didn't kill us much during enslavement because we were worth too much money to kill. But as soon as enslavement was over, they started lynching, and lynching with a passion. And they would lynch us for anything, literally. They would lynch you because there was one brother who did not move off the sidewalk or whatever it was to let a white man by, so they killed him. A white lady asked her brother to run an errand. He was not enslaved. She did not own him. He told her no. They lynched him just because he told her no. Another one, and this one is funny. See, those who know me well, like my friend Darius Mans here, he just reminded me we've been knowing each other for 50 years. I'm like, I didn't say, you know what? I made an expletive. But I'm trying to keep my language clean in my old age. It ain't working. But I'm trying. But, you know, Darius, just thinking back to all those times and all the things that we've had to look at in terms of enslavement. Now, Darius reminded me that there's an exhibit in the South Capitol of MIT, which is where we both hold doctorates in economics from. I only raise that because MIT hasn't given that man who lives in a house that enslaved people built any money. You know, Harvard is rolling over now. All these other places are rolling over now. MIT says we are critical to the sciences. We ain't giving you no money. This is insanity. This is the kind of insanity that we're living in. But it's the insanity that comes from lynching culture that allows you to erase a people. That if you had the nerve to own something, you could be killed. So there is a horrifying story of Anthony Crawford. Does anybody know about him? Anthony Crawford was a brother in South Carolina who owned what they said was 400 acres of good cotton land. Today it would be worth a few $1 million. The newspaper described him as what did they say? A wealthy Negro and arrogant. So he went to the country store where he grew cotton, and he wanted to sell some of his cotton seed. The man who owned the store offered him, he was standing in line behind several other merchants. The man who owned the store offered him 5 cents a pound less than he offered the previous person who was a white man. The brother said, oh no. He said, I would rather throw my damn cotton seed in the river, direct quote, than to sell it at a discount. And he walked out of there. There was a law in the books that said a black person could not curse at a white person. But he didn't curse at the white man, he cursed at his own cotton seed. He said, my damn cotton seed. Well, they arrested him for mouthing off to a white man. The fine was $15, which today would be a few hundred. He reached in his pocket and threw the money at the sheriff. Unfortunately, they lynched him. They left his body hanging off a telephone pole until it rotted. And then they told his widow and children they had to get off the land. 2 white men who were his economic competitors got his land. That's economic lynching. About 1/8 of the lynchings that I've looked at were about economics. Now, say they want to have this lie that they were about rape. They're about, and first of all, as Ida B. Wells documented and many others, many of the interracial relationships were consensual. Alexander Manley, who edited a newspaper in South Carolina, who was rumored to be the illegitimate son of a white former governor, he, in his newspaper, wrote, well, if a comely white lass and a handsome black man happen to get together, that's not rape. They ran him out of town. Rebecca Felton, who was the first U.S. senator who was a woman, wrote, I would rather lynch 1,000 than to see one white woman violated. That was the tone and the tenor. But where did it start? It started with enslavement, with the notion that you could do whatever you wanted to a black person, and there would be no consequences. So every time we remember this day, what we have to remember are the names that cannot be spoken because we don't know all of them. We have to remember the violence that happened to our people. We have to remember because it will give us resilience. We have to remember because too many want to forget. I mean, how dare that man say he wants to go into our museum that it took how long for folks to get? How long? John Lewis, struggling. So many struggling to get that museum. I remember like it was yesterday. I was cleaning my office. This young lady, my assistant, Miss Tatios K-Rob, is poor child. She has to deal with all the stuff in my house. But I have the opening program from the museum. And we were going through boxes. I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to keep this. My problem is I'm going to keep everything. If I didn't have a big house, they would call me a hoarder. But since I have a big house, you say I got a lot of stuff. But in any case, I remember that day. And I remember the triumph and how much it took. And that man wants to say there's too much about slavery. No, there can never be too much about slavery. We need to talk about slavery every day, literally, every day. Because there would be no United States without enslavement. And that's what these people have to know. And so, when Al Green calls, you got to say, first I say, you sure you got the right one? And then once we establish the fact that he got the right one, then we say, what up, brother? Because introducing this legislation is an act of courage at a time like this where people would like to erase us. It's an act of courage to say, we will remember, and to raise it every year. President Biden, I think the thing is outside, or over there, issued a statement. Thank you, President Biden. But like President Biden always, and I'm not trying to be ugly, always too little, too late. He issued a statement. He did not push the legislation, nor did he push H.R. 40, John Conyers' legislation. It was not to give, and first of all, you don't give me what is mine. So reparations belong to me. So you don't give me gratuitously what is mine. I had the privilege of testifying before Congress on June 19, 2019. About H.R. 40. And it was funny, because the Republicans, congressmen, were crazy. This one fool said, well, why do you need reparations? You had President Obama. And, I mean, my friends in NAARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, there are a whole bunch of us on the commission, so I pulled the short straw and got to testify. Everybody wanted to. They picked me, but then they said, Malveaux, you need to watch your language. I said, all right. I said, I promise not to use profanity, and then pause, much. Actually, I didn't use any. It's inappropriate to use profanity when you, speaking before the Congress, but I did roll my neck a couple times, especially when that man said, we already had reparations, we had Obama. And President Obama, bless his soul, and I love him dearly, and we're grateful to him, but he wouldn't do a reparations resolution, and he could have. But I tell people all the time, I interviewed the president in 2004, before he was president, and we were on Willie Gary's station, and I asked him about, we were in a hotel suite, cameras were rolling. I asked about reparations. He said, turn them cameras off. You want to talk about it? They won't talk about it. Reparations is our due. Compensation is our due. It is not compensation for enslavement simply. It's also compensation for what happened after enslavement. Because by 1910, black people had, but at the end of enslavement, we had literally nothing. By 1910, we had, it was something like $1 for every $15 that white people had. So we went from like $1 for every $36 white people had to $1 for every $15. So we cut the wealth gap in half in less than 50 years. Then what happened? Jim Crow laws, other laws preventing us from owning property. So to end up today, we have $1 for basically every $7 to $10 white people have. So we made more relative progress between 1870 and 1910 than we made between 1910 and now. That is a legacy of enslavement. That's why we must remember. That's why we must remember. So there should be no day. There should be no day where we don't say thank you to our ancestors. No day where we don't look up and say, we come too far to turn back now. Won't let nobody turn us around. If you tired of protesting, too bad. You know, that's like saying you tired of sunrise. It's gonna come tomorrow. Be tired of it if you wanna be. You have to protest. You have to do what must be done. Folks, I say I'm honored and privileged to be with you on this Slave Remembrance Day. Don't forget, don't ever forget, and continue to struggle for reparations now. Thank you very much.